Good evening, community. You are about to enter a world where the paranormal is very possible, where the supernatural is beside us at all times. Remember that the following stories are not suitable for sensitive people, especially if you are suggestible or if you have already been a witness to an event you cannot explain, because then we cannot assure you that the following stories will not call something towards you, that you will not be the next protagonist of tales of the night. I used to start working every day at 9 in the morning in a factory in Atlacomulco, state of Mexico. I had already been working as an accounting assistant for some time, and that cold Monday in November, I wanted to leave early. So I decided to arrive early and be at the factory at 7 o'clock a.m. When the security guard, a kind man around 60 years old, greeted me with a smile and said, "What's up? Everyone decided to wake up early or what?" Confused, I asked him why he said that, and he responded that Gerardo, the human resources manager and husband of a friend of mine, was already working since dawn. There my confusion increased. That couldn't be. Gerardo couldn't be there because he had had an accident the previous Friday night. When taking a curve too quickly, his car had fallen dramatically into the lake, and when firefighters arrived to rescue him, it was already too late. He had drowned. When I told the police what had occurred, he didn't believe me and even got a bit angry, thinking I was joking about something I definitely wasn't going to joke about. "Hey, no, you don't joke about that," he told me. "Besides, from here, you can see the light on in his office. Dead people don't turn on lights, right?" I insisted that it was true, that I wasn't lying, and then he showed me the security cameras where, yes, it was clearly visible how Gerardo was entering through the street door. Seeing me so scared, the police began to intrigue himself more and noticed that Gerardo indeed had not greeted anyone. However, since it was dark and foggy, he didn't perceive anything strange. On the camera, we never saw Gerardo's face, only how he walked directly towards the offices, until disappearing into the darkness. We remained quiet for a while. I was very scared and didn't want to go alone to the office. I felt relief when the police said, "Don't go alone, I'll accompany you." Quickly, the police took his flashlight and keys, and we headed towards the offices. As we approached, we saw through the window blinds of that office, Gerardo's office, shadows walking back and forth as if searching for something. Upon reaching the door, the police pushed it thinking it was open, but only cursed in the air in surprise. At first, I didn't understand why, but I almost had a heart attack when I saw him take out the keys to open the door. I was behind him and couldn't help but bump into him when he froze. "Look," he told me, "on the floor." On the floor there were wet shoe prints. We stood still for a few seconds, seconds that seemed like hours to me. Then the police officer gathered his courage, and as he opened the office door, he began shouting obscenities, as if trying to scare away someone who might be inside. Finally, we entered. Having taken a step inside, the police officer ran out. He left me alone there, paralyzed with fear, with my eyes closed. I began to pray something I no longer remember. Doubting between leaving and seeing what was happening, I took a deep breath. I opened my eyes. There was no one there, but there were papers on the desk. They were soaked. When I saw them, I felt a chill run down my entire back. With great fear, I approached the desk. I took one of the papers. It's likely that no one will believe me, but what I took was a life insurance policy, under my friend's name. Gerardo had contracted it so she would receive money in case of his death, but no one had any idea it existed. I was concentrating on reading when suddenly the police officer shouted at me that we should leave. Without looking back, I ran towards the exit with the paper in my hand. When we arrived at the booth, seized by terror, we saw the general manager at the entrance. He rarely arrived at that hour, but he was precisely there to inform all the personnel that Gerardo had died the previous Friday, drowned in the lake, something that only I, being close to his wife, knew. Hello, community. The story I am about to tell you happened approximately 10 years ago in Morelia, Michoacan, when I was a student. At that time, I was beginning to realize that I could sense the presence or energy of people, of things I could not see, of things I did not know. I remember going through many supernatural experiences, which I will gradually tell you about. But today, I want to focus specifically on the one I call the Red House. Well, that's what my sister and I used to call it. I was about to finish my degree in pharmaceutical biology, and at the time I lived with the lady we called Doña Rebe, a very strong woman who treated me like a daughter. Now she takes care of us from heaven. My family is from a town in eastern Michoacan, where it was previously necessary to leave in order to study a career. Just about to finish mine, my mom informed me that my sister would come to live with me to study high school. At that moment, I assumed responsibility for my younger sister and thought, I can't have her living here. And the fact is that the lady was renting me a small room, and there were more tenants. I didn't think it was an appropriate environment for my sister, or at least that's what my protective instinct told me. So I began looking for a house where I could live only with her, and finally found it. It was a large, colorful house, with fruit trees and 2 very spacious rooms. And something that caught our attention was that it had a large bathtub, so we decided to rent it. The day we went to do a deep cleaning to move in, I had a strange sensation, as if someone was watching us in the house. There I told my sister, "There's something here," to which she mockingly only responded, "Here you go again, just like Carlos Trejo." I just laughed, but deep down I knew something was not right, that it was not a joke. The house was quite dirty, so we took approximately a week to clean it thoroughly, meticulously checking every corner. When it was finally ready, we moved in very happily, and so fell the first night, and everyone went to their room. Suddenly, a very loud noise was heard in the kitchen, as if someone was moving dishes or making containers fall. My sister sent me a message saying, "Do you hear? I think someone broke into the house." I replied that she should hide in the closet and not come out. Being the older sister, I felt I should go out and see, that I should take care of her, so I did. But what was my surprise? There was no one, and moreover, the dishes were in their place. Needless to say, from that night, the noises continued. Sometimes they were in the kitchen, other times in the bathtub, where it sounded like someone was kicking, like someone was playing with plastic containers inside it. With time, we came to get used to the noises. However, every time someone entered the house for the first time, they were attacked or heard their name when crossing the hallway to enter. This, for example, happened to my husband, who at that time was my boyfriend. When he tried to cross the hallway and open the door, he felt an irrational fear that prevented him from opening it normally. He says that then a cold invaded him, and that he could clearly hear. A woman's voice whispered in his ear. I was preparing breakfast and heard someone knocking on the door strongly. I hurried to see what was happening, and when I opened it, I saw him, pale and completely altered. There I calmed him down and he told me what had happened to him. Days later, the same thing happened to my sister. She heard a woman's voice that I believe was the same, calling her from the hallway. When my mom visited us, she was not the exception. On one occasion, when she was visiting, she was cooking pozole for me, my favorite. She had her back to me while I was sitting in the living room doing homework. Suddenly, I saw a plastic napkin holder that was on the counter fly towards her. I saw how it hit her in the back. We were in shock, and my mom simply told me, "Daughter, please, get out of this house." I remained silent. That day, my mom had to return to the village, since at that time she was the director of the health center and had a lot of work. My sister, very attached to her, did not want her to leave. So after much insisting, my mom agreed to stay until the next day and leave at 5 in the morning to arrive on time. The house had a large window in the living room that looked out to the garage, as well as a small window in the kitchen. You know, Those who know old houses can probably imagine it. The next day, when my mom was leaving, around 5 in the morning, something made her turn towards the kitchen window, as if suddenly feeling that someone was watching her, and she thought that one of us had woken up. What she saw there, peeking, was a terrifying face, a completely demonic face, looking at her. I know that at that moment my mom would have wanted to take us with her, but she knew that if she returned, if she woke us up, she would not convince us. The only thing she could do was give us a blessing before leaving. We have been living there for a while now and did not want to leave the house. My mom only respected our decision, although she was increasingly less in agreement. I particularly clearly remember once when the store lady told me, "Girl, I don't want to scare you, but I have to tell you, at night when I close my store, when I go home, I see Mrs. Chonita sitting in your corridor. The little old lady who lived there so much. I see her with her head looking down and completely covered, but there she sits as if she were still selling her candies, as she did in life." I remained frozen. I didn't know what to answer, but she continued, "Chonita died alone in that room. Right there, look there." And saying this, she pointed to a window facing the street. I felt a chill, realizing that was my room. I told my sister, and she shared that a friend who had visited her had been struck out by an ironing board, thrown by the entity. We were very impressed, because this made us think that the entity was not only making noises, it was not only playing with things, it was not only trying to scare us, it had the ability to move material objects, and therefore we were truly in danger. Weeks later, plastic balls began to appear all over the house. We thought they were children's balls from the neighbors, and that perhaps the cats had brought them in. We took them to the patio so someone could claim them, but no one ever did. There was one ball in particular that no matter how many times we took it out, it always returned when we weren't looking. And it did so in a specific place, to my sister's room. We began to believe that, in addition to everything, we also had a ghost child living with us. And the pranks repeated. He would hide things from us, and the ball would constantly return to the same place. And I tell you, it was always the same. A plastic ball that looked like a soccer ball. We got so used to this and to them that we decided to call the child Simon. Every time noises were heard or pranks began, we would say, "Calm down, Simon." And to our surprise, he would stop doing it for a while. One day, around 3 o'clock, I was still doing homework in the living room. My sister had gone to the village. I was alone in the house. I was very concentrated, when suddenly I felt a chill. I swear I even heard the leaves of the trees dragging across the patio, as if a current of air was moving them. And I heard the sound of the doorknob in my sister's room, as if someone was trying to open it. That door had a trick to open. It did not open easily. It was impossible for it to open by itself. But suddenly it opened. The little cat beside me stood up with its hair curled, looking towards that room. I was extremely scared and ran to my room praying while closing the door, but every time I advanced in the prayer, the wood of the door began to creak. I asked God to help me, and as if it were the last blow, a hematology book from my bookshelf fell to the floor. Scared, I got into bed. I continued praying until sleep finally overcame me. A couple of days later, when my sister returned, I didn't want to tell her what had happened to not scare her more, so I simply tried to act normally. However, I could not stop thinking that what had happened that night was not Simon. Shortly after, a friend of my sister came to visit with her little daughter. We were surprised that the little girl, about 2 years old, did not want to be in the house, much less enter my sister's room. I asked her mother to leave because she did not like being there. She did not want to enter that room, even though my sister insisted for her to play with her stuffed animals. The girl even began to cry until they finally left. My sister and I thought that maybe she had seen Simon, since they say children can see things adults cannot. We shared the property with another house. When the tenants of the neighboring house moved out, we felt we were completely alone. The next house was far away. It had a high wall, so now we felt completely isolated. Those days, the entire family came to visit us, and very happy about their visit, we went out to buy soda to eat as a family, as is customary in the villages. Upon returning, I asked if they had gone to the patio to pick lemons, as I had requested, and one of my uncles responded. We didn't go out because we were embarrassed with the lady who was doing laundry. What if she told us not to pick them, that they were hers? I was somewhat disoriented, as no one was living there anymore. I told him the neighboring house was empty, that no one lived there, and he answered me very confidently. "Daughter, I saw an older lady washing clothes. She even wore a robe. She had short hair." At that moment, I thought about what the store lady had told me about Mrs. Chonita, but I only responded to my uncle. Who knows? Maybe someone had come in, someone had come for something pending, but I knew we were completely alone. I knew exactly what my uncle had seen. Weeks later, another uncle, my mom's brother, who is a mechanic, came. He came because my car was not working well. I had taken it to several mechanics, but it just wouldn't get fixed. My uncle offered to come fix it at the Red House, and I accepted. While he was fixing the car, I went to work. But when I returned, he told me a lady had entered, that she had greeted him. He described the same person my other uncle had seen. He also mentioned that she was washing clothes. I said, "My uncle Israel saw her too, but no one is living here. No one enters." My uncle told me no, that this was not a ghost, that it was a lady who had even greeted him. And again, I could only respond that I didn't know, that God knows who it might have been. Weeks passed, months passed, and a year passed. We continued living there, already accustomed to them, and they to us, I suppose. Over time, my boyfriend and I decided to formalize things a bit more. So he came to live with me. He saw all those balls that were around the house, but he took them out and gave them to the neighborhood children, including that special ball, Simon's ball. It was the worst thing he could have done. From then on, the activity in the house increased considerably. There were noises everywhere, and there was something that scared me very much, a voice that imitated me. On one occasion, I turned off all the lights before going to sleep. I approached the living room where my cat was and said, "Hello, my love," and turned off the outside light. The only thing that gave us a bit of light, and in the darkness of the living room, I heard someone respond, "Hello, my love." As days went by, we realized that Simon was angry with him, and the activity was centered on my husband. Almost everything happened to him, almost all the strange things he heard. Sometime later, I became pregnant. I had already finished my career and graduated, so I quit my job at a clinical laboratory. I didn't want my baby to be in danger from the samples I handled. I dedicated myself completely to the home and caring for my pregnancy. The months passed and those entities no longer bothered us as much. I believe the culminating point was when I was about to give birth. One night when I turned off the living room lights, I heard the sound of an ambulance, as if coming from the backyard. I saw that the new neighbors had called one because a woman with them had become ill. The issue was when I found out why, and it was that the woman almost had a heart attack. Because she saw something terrifying in the bathroom. They said she panicked, that she suffered an anxiety attack, that the ambulance took her away for treatment. When they left, I turned off the last light in the living room, and as I was heading to my bedroom, something stopped me in my tracks. I saw a black silhouette that, somehow, stood out from the darkness of the night. Whatever it was, began to walk towards me. I felt very scared. My baby, my daughter, began to move a lot inside my womb. Every time that entity came closer, it seemed to unfold. It walked with clumsy steps, but was getting larger. Terrified, I tried to turn on the light but couldn't find the switch. When I finally did, the figure immediately disappeared. By the time my daughter was born, I was already very scared. I didn't want those spirits or whatever was there to harm her. I didn't even want them to be near her. I finally decided to leave that house, but before doing so, I took some photos of my husband with my daughter. I inadvertently did it in burst mode. When you take multiple photos in a second, and that's when I saw him for the first time. Simon was completely real. He was behind the two of them, looking at the camera. Of all the burst photos I took, he only appeared in one. Simon was real, or whatever was camouflaging itself as him. Over time we lost the photo, but a few months ago I recovered it from my father-in-law's computer. I took a photo of the screen, but it came out scratched by the phone camera's reflection and the computer's brightness. Still, I would love to show it to you. Thank you for listening to my story, community. Thank you for continuing here. And if you've reached this point, please leave your opinion about the stories of tonight. But for now, it's time to continue, because you haven't survived this episode. You are listening to Tales of the Night. My name is Alfredo Renteria. I currently live in Ciudad Lerdo, Durango, and I am 44 years old. My story happened when I was 14. At that time, we lived in Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas. My father was the foreman of a cattle ranch located at kilometer 14 of the national highway that leads from Nuevo Laredo to Monterrey, Nuevo León. The ranch was called Santo Tomás. The gate is located roadside, but the ranch's main house is 12 kilometers inland. My family consisted of my father, my mother, my younger brother, and me. We were happy children who greatly enjoyed the ranch's tasks: herding cattle to the corrals, deworming them, vaccinating them, and other related work. In the afternoons, we would patrol the fence's edges to scare away poachers, which were very common back then, as there were abundant deer, quail, armadillos, coyotes, wild turkeys, and even pumas, mountain cats, and much more exotic fauna. We would do these patrols on horseback. Sometimes we would bathe in the round water tanks placed for the cattle to have drinking water available. What I'm going to tell you happened one afternoon when work ended at 4. It was the end of September, and the boss, Don Seferino Arzabocha, paid the employees' wages, including my father's. My father told my mother to get ready to go to Laredo to do the month's grocery shopping, and she said yes. In a few minutes, she already had the shopping list in hand and her wallet full of the bills my father had just given her. We, playful and conspiratorial, agreed to ask my father to let us go. We wanted to do the patrol along the trails. What we wanted was to ride, to gallop with the horses until we were flying, as we would say. Because when the horses picked up speed, we would open our arms and pretend we were flying. After much pleading, they accepted, and they went in the truck while we, very happy, prepared the horses and left determined to have a very fun afternoon. After finishing, we stopped at one of the tanks intending to take a dive. This particular one had a depth of 3 meters, but we knew how to swim very well. We had everything prepared for swimming. It was about 3 kilometers from the ranch. We tied the horses to a branch of a huge mesquite tree beside it, and soon we were in the water, playing, laughing, enjoying ourselves. At a certain moment, when I came out of the water, I lay down on the edge to dry myself, or so I thought. I never noticed that the usual sounds of the forest had fallen into absolute silence. They were not heard. Not the birds, nor the insects, nor the crickets. Suddenly, the horses became restless, began to pull and snort. Horses only snort when they smell a puma, a bear, large predators that can attack them. My little brother also realized this. He came out of the water, and without saying anything, we dressed without even drying ourselves. With difficulty, we climbed onto the horses, at least enough to be able to mount them. My brother and I only looked at each other, and without saying anything, we knew we had to return to the ranch. My brother was in front. I, as an escort, was behind. When passing a curve in the path, suddenly my horse gave a tremendous jolt that left me hanging from its neck. My brother's horse reared up and was snorting with its ears back, pawing very aggressively. I don't even know how, but I was able to get back in the saddle, and the animal, as if knowing out of nowhere, started a full-speed race. And I could only shout to my brother to hold on tight, to not stop for anything in the world. I remember that in that frantic gallop, when I looked back, I could only scream at what I saw. I want to clarify that although the sun had already set, I could see it clearly. There was enough light to know it wasn't tricks of my eyes in the darkness. What I saw was a kind of being with long hands, short legs, and a head that was a mix of dog and human, which growled in a horrible way, like I had never heard a dog growl before. The worst part is that this thing was not standing still. It was running behind us. That's why the horses were running wild, and that thing followed us to the ranch. We had 4 German Shepherd dogs, Fanor, Lucas, Pancho, and Tico. They were savages that killed the coyotes that dared to come and eat my mother's chickens. They were really very, very brave dogs. When we arrived at full speed, we dismounted the horses. We ran to take refuge in the house. It was made of stone, with very high wooden ceilings. Thank God we managed to close the doors and windows. My brother went up to the loft, a kind of platform where my mother stored vegetables and tortillas to keep them in good condition, almost at the ceiling level. I remember well that I told him that no matter what happened, he should not look out or come down from there. I looked for the rifle my father had hidden in a trunk. I took it out, put 4 bullets in it. I stood on total alert. I looked through the slit of a windowless window that had a metal plate. I could see very clearly that that thing was prowling around the house. Even with the afternoon night wind, I could smell that stench. That thing smelled like a dead animal. It scratched the doors that were made of thick, strong wood, windows that had metal bars that were bent after that night. My dogs howled in the distance. Brave, furious, but without the courage to return to the house, without the courage to face whatever was there. And I swear those dogs would have given their lives for us. The horses disappeared that night, with saddles and reins on. I don't know how long that siege lasted. After a while, everything went silent, and suddenly the corral planks could be heard breaking from the cattle's stampede. That thing had gone in. It had attacked them, and the poor animals ran away from there. Suddenly, thank God, I could see the truck lights of my parents. The dogs were running with them. My father knew something was very wrong because he had found them far from the ranch on the road. That's why, when they arrived, my father fired shots in the air with a gun he always carried in his waist. I don't remember, but my father says that when he and Mom entered, I was like absent, with fixed eyes on the window and holding that rifle tightly in my hands. My mother was hysterical, calling out for my little brother. He, who was 6 years old at the time, was still hidden in the loft where I had put him. My father had to slap me to make me react. This last part they told me, but I really don't remember. We could not sleep that night. The next day we went out to the yard and found footprints similar to human feet, to human hands, as if something had walked on all 4s. The strange thing was that the marks on the doors were like bear claws, and everything smelled of dead animal. It smelled like that for weeks. The dogs went back and forth, sniffing, growling, and they were restless, nervous. The horses returned 3 days later. The cattle were almost impossible to herd back into the corrals after repairing them. My brother and I were being cleansed with eggs and pirulo for several days, and we couldn't stop having horrible nightmares. The woman who was going to be our servant told my mother that what had pursued us was a nahual, to be very careful not to leave us alone, not even during the day, and much less at night. The boss offered my father more money to stay at the ranch, but after a few weeks, neither he nor any of the other workers wanted to stay. We left there. Until this day, we never returned. Even now, being a 44-year-old man, when I remember that afternoon, my hands start to tremble uncontrollably. I hope you can share my story, and I send a hug to you and the entire community. From Ciudad Lerdo, Durango.